welcome you. First of all, how many of you all are new to coming to one of our author programs? Raise your hand. Oh, God. Let me tell you, we have really got a good program. I would encourage you to either pick up a sheet like this in front, but better yet, check out our website, www.jimmycarterlibrary.gov, because we have all kinds, I mean, it spans the different interests of authors. Like tomorrow night, we have a gentleman, Jerome Lawrence. He is a local artist. I first heard about him when the Carters picked his artwork for one of their Christmas cards a couple of years ago, because he is also a mental health patient. He suffers from schizophrenia. And he's going to talk about what it's like to not only be a successful artist, but also to deal with mental health issues. Tom Brokaw is coming in November. Madeleine Albright is coming in September. Those of you, I just finished a book called The Atlantic. Simon Winchester, some of you may know him from The Professor and the Madman or Krakatoa. He's just a fabulous author. We're lining him up. There are a lot of authors that we have coming, and they're just, it's really, to me, it is a great opportunity here in Atlanta to be able to see and meet and ask questions of authors. Simon Rushdie, he's been here a couple of times doing author programs. Ken Follett, people like that. Chris Matthews, I think we're talking about trying to get him to come back here. And so please check out our website, because it's a great place to see wonderful, wonderful authors. Also, if you haven't been, we redesigned the museum back and reopened in late 2009. It is really, really good. In fact, the awards just keep coming in, whether it's Atlanta Magazine's Best of Atlanta, or the Georgia Association of Museums and Galleries named it the best. And I forget what they used a term to include both museums and galleries, but essentially the best museum in Atlanta. There was another award we just heard about today from the Houston International Film Festival for one of the films. It is really a great museum, and you'll really, in fact, the whole family would love it. And right now there's a fabulous exhibit called Mixing Metaphors. It's artwork that happens to be owned by Bank of America. I never really thought that banks own a lot of artwork, but they have got a collection of artwork that is phenomenal. It's by 38 African-American artists, and it's everything from photographs, historic photographs of Martin Luther King, to Gordon Parks, photographs by Gordon Parks, to these shacks by Beverly Buchanan, to what is my favorite. It looks like a quilt. In fact, if you pick up one of these, you'll see it's called Aunt Emmy on the Jones Road, and it looks like, say, like a quilt. When President Carter was going through, he said, I've painted on all kinds of things, whether it's regular canvas, like for art, or plywood and stuff like that. He said, I've never done anything like that. I mean, he was impressed too, so you will be impressed as well. But I do encourage you to come back and visit us. If nothing else, stroll our backgrounds with the lakes and the gardens and stuff. It's really pretty. It was a couple of months ago that Glenn Carroll from the Nuclear Watch South came, dropped in my office and said, Tony, this had just come right after the earthquake and tsunami in Japan. And she said, there is this author, Stephanie Cooke, and she wrote a book about nuclear power and that sort of thing. And you ought to take a look at it. We're interested in getting her here. And I did. I took a look at it. I took a look at what was going on around the world. And I thought, this would really be an interesting topic for us to have. So here to introduce our speaker tonight, please join me in welcoming Glenn Carroll from Nuclear Watch South.
We're really happy to be here, and this is our third author we've brought. We've had Helen Caldicott and Dave Freeman, and now we have Stephanie Cooke tonight. And now, y'all concerned about nukes at all? You're laughing.
No,
Did I hear a yes?
No, nukes. Y'all.
Yeah. Well, I got turned on to this book through a couple of back channels, which really got my attention. And when I read it, I just loved the title, In Mortal Hands. And I read it with a hopeful heart. And I gotta say, it's an unblinking look at our situation. But it's a wonderful story without being heavy-handed. There's a little hint about the character and the personality of the players that make mortal decisions about this, devastating technology that we've delivered to the earth. And I will say at the end, I did emerge with hope and very inspired. It helped cut the problem down to size to me. We are humans, and we are dealing with a human problem. So Miss Stephanie Cooke has a 13-year-old son, and he's getting out of school in a few days, so that worked out for her to come. And she has worked for McGraw-Hill, largely, also the Associated Press, but she's a journalist, she's a reporter. And she found herself on the nuclear industry beat. And she met the people that make the technology and that regulate the technology. And she got the big picture that most of them miss. And so she's here tonight to speak. Please welcome Stephanie Cooke.
Thank you very much. I hope I live up to this billing and also the illustrious crowd of other authors who've been here and who are coming. I wanted to just give you a little background before I sort of start talking about Fukushima, a little background about the book, and it sort of sets the picture for Fukushima. Because when I started thinking about writing this book, it was in the year 1999, and I thought that the nuclear story was kind of more or less over. There weren't any reactors being ordered, or very few, certainly not in the United States. And the former superpowers were disarming. And so I thought, it looks like it might just finally be fading, and it's worth sitting down and telling the story, so maybe it doesn't happen again. Or just laying it out for people to sort of make a decision. At that point, I wasn't sure whether I was going to take a view. I was just going to let the story speak for itself, because I think it does, and you almost don't have to say anything about how you feel about it. Anyway, as you all know, I turned out to be pretty wrong, because in that year, actually, things were gearing up for the so-called Renaissance. Pete Domenici was agitating in Washington and putting the wheels in motion. And then when George Bush took over in 2001, he assigned the energy beat to Vice President Cheney, and he got hooked on the idea of nuclear as being the answer to fossil fuels and lowering carbon emissions. Anyway, I was kind of in and out of nuclear. I was living in London at the time, and I thought, I'll go to this conference in 2002. And that's when I first heard the term nuclear renaissance. By then, the DOE, the Department of Energy, had made it official, and there was going to be a joint government industry cost-sharing effort, unlike the last time around, where taxpayer money would be used to help finance these new reactors. And the idea was that we would have new reactors, plural, in the 2010 timeframe, which, as you can see, that deadline has already been missed, not surprisingly, because it's pretty much like, I really had this sense of deja vu, because I started covering the nuclear industry in 1980, 1 year after 3 Mile Island, and I was kind of seeing it on the way out then. So this was a very sort of curious thing to be watching, as far as I was concerned. Also, by the way, just one kind of amusing anecdote. At that 2002 conference, it was August, well, it was September, early September, and somebody sidled up to me at the conference and said, "Notice how there's no Japanese here." And I said, "Yeah, that's funny." And also, at that conference, they were going to award this man called Tokyo Kano the award for the best service to the industry. And he wasn't there either. He used to be a vice president of TEPCO. Well, they were all back at home because NISA, which is the Nuclear and Industrial Safety Agency, had just announced that TEPCO had been falsifying safety records for something like more than a decade. And it was really like a really big scandal, especially that NISA was announcing it, because, as I'll explain later, there's kind of an incestuous relationship between, there is in every country in the world, by the way. The Japanese are not, I don't want to sort of single them out, but there's a real incestuous thing going on over there. So, the other good news that year was that Congress had railroaded through the Yucca Mountain project. So there was a lot of ballyhoo about it at this conference. They said, you know, we've solved the psychological problem of waste. It's solved. It's going to be full steam ahead. And I was thinking, wow, this is amazing. And also, the other thing was that the liberal media was getting behind this, you know, just kind of saying that everything's okay with nuclear now. We've put behind Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island, and we're all mature and grown up now, and we're not going to be scared about radioactivity, and it's okay. So, as I wrote the book, I was thinking it's a little like the 50s, except for in the 50s, we were in the period of building up arms. And in the 50s, we hadn't accumulated so much nuclear waste. But instead of horizontal, I get these two mixed up. Instead of, vertical proliferation, where you have the two sides competing to build more and more weapons. You had vertical proliferation, which was the spread of weapons to all these other countries like Pakistan, India already, and now North Korea, and then possibly Iran. Iraq, they'd already been discovered in the early 90s. And South Africa had given up its program before the end of the apartheid regime. And just a side note, in every case but the US, Russia, and China, all of those nuclear weapons would not have happened without the protection and help of a civilian nuclear program, either because it disguised what was going on or through trade routes or whatever. They were helped by by having what is called a civilian program. That's a long, complicated story, and since this subject tonight is Fukushima, I'm not going to delve too heavily into the topic of proliferation. So anyway, in the year 2010, just the year before Fukushima, there were about 62 reactors under construction. But most of those, the action was east of us. It was China, 18, Russia, 10, India, 7, South Korea, 5, and then 1 in Japan, 1 in Finland, 1 in France, 1 in Argentina, Iran, Pakistan, Slovakia, 1 in the United States. And that was a retread, Watts-Bar, the TBA's Watts-Bar reactor, which was being finished after many, many years. Germany, which is, as you know, pretty heavily anti-nuclear, Angela Merkel had fought to overturn a previous decision to basically stop reactors in the year 2022. So she extended reactor lives by 12 years. This was a very hard-fought battle. And Switzerland was planning for new build. The UK was planning for new build. The UK, which, by the way, has a humongous waste bill from reprocessing operations. Star Wars size, but billions, well over 100 billion. Vietnam was talking about one. The United Arab Emirates is actually contracted for a reactor. The United Arab Emirates, which has about 2 people that know anything about nuclear in it, and has hired all these people from the West on very fat contracts. So that's also kind of a strange thing. Turkey contracted with Russia for 4 reactors in an earthquake zone on the Mediterranean, and still, by the way, wants to build. I'm setting the scene for Fukushima. So now I will go to Japan and tell you a little bit about what was going on there, business as usual, where there was a strange, I've always found it kind of a strange acceptance of nuclear, very muted anti-nuclear movement, and I never quite understood it. And if you'll forgive me for a minute, I want to just go back to the 1950s to tell you a little bit about how the Japanese nuclear program got started. It was thanks to us, Uncle Sam, And it was part of the great Atoms for Peace push for nuclear, not only in this country, but overseas. And with Japan, there was an added twist because the people